55 is a safe speed and it's a good speed for the highway, but personally, I like to go a lot faster than that. And to do that, I have to be on the racetrack.
Winston Cup stock car racing is the most popular motorsport in the USA. It's one of the fastest forms of motor racing in the world. Its fastest ever race was run at an average speed of 186 miles an hour for 500 miles. Apart from the sport's huge television audiences, about 1.5 million people watch the action at the tracks every year. Its 29 event calendar features races all over the USA. It runs from February till November every year, and the NASCAR Winston Cup is the most grueling challenge in motor racing anywhere in the world. What makes this form of racing unique and especially demanding is the almost weekly schedule of very long races.
We run more 500-mile races than anybody. I guess we've got about 15 500-mile races. Indy cars have got 3. Formula One cars never run 5. They wouldn't know how to run 500 miles. So from a physical standpoint of view and a training standpoint of view, that's the driver's responsibility, to keep himself in shape to be able to be as good at the end of that race as he was in the beginning.
Darrell Waltrip has the world's record for prize money won in any form of motor racing, over $6 million. And he is one of the most successful Winston Cup stock car race drivers of all time. With Junior Johnson's Budweiser Chevrolet Monte Carlo, he won the Drivers' Championship 3 times in 5 years. But what exactly is Winston Cup stock car racing? Just what kinds of modifications can be made to the cars? What special demands does it make on the team? What does it take to be a winner? These are some of the questions we'll be answering in this film. But first, we're going to show you just how fast a stock car is. Darrell's race car is developed from the street version of the Chevrolet Monte Carlo SS. Now, the race car is obviously much faster. But to show just how much faster, as the street car drives around Pocono Raceway at 55 miles an hour, Darrell is going to try to complete a lap, come into the pits, make a pit stop, and go out again and complete another lap, all before the street car has completed even one single lap of the 2.5-mile track. Unlike a street car, a race car doesn't have to be a compromise. It doesn't have to ride well, for example, so it's modified for optimum handling.
Ever how good a street car handles and drives, our car is probably 100% better than that. With the wide Goodyear tires and the technology that we employ on a stock car, plus the engine itself. In a passenger car, you got 175 horsepower. We have at our disposal 630 horsepower.
As Darrell's car comes into the pits at the end of its first lap, the street car is not even halfway round the track. The mechanics are doing this for real, just as in a race where they try to change 2 tires and put at least 11 gallons of fuel in the car in around 12 seconds. These race cars take quite a bit of handling.
You have a lot of power, a big car that weighs a lot, and it takes a tremendous amount of physical ability, and it takes a tremendous amount of finesse to manhandle one of these cars around these high bank racetracks. It's totally opposite of IndyCar racing. IndyCar drivers have a very difficult time adapting to a stock car. They're big, heavy, and kind of clumsy, and you really have to develop a different driving style to handle one of them.
These are the fastest racing cars in the world, based on street cars. They lap the more steeply banked tracks at over 200 miles an hour. And here at Pocono, they lap at over 150 miles an hour. So it's not surprising that the race car easily catches and passes the street car before it has even been able to complete one lap. The racing is controlled by the rules of the National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing, NASCAR. These rules determine which make and type of cars you can race and exactly what modifications you can make to them. The officials check that the major body panels have not been altered in any way to improve the car's aerodynamics and that they are exactly like those of the street Monte Carlo SS. They also check that the wheelbase is the 110 inches specified by NASCAR. And everything will be checked again before the race to make sure there is no cheating. To prevent teams making modifications to make their cars lighter, which might make them weaker and less safe, NASCAR insists on a minimum weight of 3,700 pounds. The mechanics weigh the car themselves so that it will be the correct weight if it is checked after a race. The cars must run on regular gasoline, which is supplied at the track, and they have a maximum tank capacity of 22 gallons in their safety Goodyear fuel cell. Since they get less than 5 miles per gallon, they have to refuel within 100 racing miles. Inside, the cars are strengthened with substantial roll cages. To prevent the doors flying open in an accident, they have to be welded shut. That's why the driver has to climb in through the window. And there is no side window glass, which might break or prevent the driver from climbing out to safety. Every aspect of the car, from the brakes to the exact way the windshield and rear window are secured, to the location of the engine, is strictly specified. The engine itself, although many modifications are allowed, has to be based entirely on a stock block and cylinder head. In this case, just like in the stock Monte Carlo SS you can buy. These alterations and modifications cost money. The total cost of a race-ready stock car is around $75,000. An engine alone is around $25,000, and a team will use about 70 engines in a season's racing. The suspension of the car is considerably modified, and many of the things that are learned on the track benefit street cars.
They have wider tires, better suspension, better shock absorbers, and all those things have certainly improved the handling characteristics of the manufacturer's cars that the consumer drives on the street.
This spin-off isn't just in terms of performance, but applies to safety as well, because the race cars have been modified to make them safer over the years.
Every time in years past that a driver was injured or killed, we came up with something to stop that accident from happening again. The fuel cell is such a safety factor. The inner liner in the tire itself, and the roll cages, and there's so many things that are incorporated in the passenger cars today that that have been tested and designed and developed in the racing arena. Padded this, padded that, door bars in the inside of the door, extra support in the roof.
A street car leaves the factory with a good compromise in its suspension settings, but race teams actually have several different cars for use on different tracks, and each car has to be set up for a particular track. A vital part of the driver's job is to make sure that setup is the best it can be.
I'm sort of like the director of an orchestra, and you know, as the director, I've had my own cars. I've built cars, I've built engines, and I've worked hand in hand with my crew, and that's part of being a good race car driver, is the understanding of the car, to know what to do to it, to go out on the racetrack, drive it around the racetrack, and come back in and say, we have the wrong sway bar, we have the wrong shocks, we have the wrong springs, we have the wrong gear. You've got to know these things, and in order to know those things, you got to know the car. So the best way to know the car is to get close to it.
A most important relationship is that between the driver and crew chief, Jeff Hammond.
He's just a little bit short of being a magician when it comes to being able to sort a race car out and to get the utmost out of the car, it seems like. Or if we've made some spring changes, he has to be able to have the ability to relate to what we've done and put it into what he's feeling with the race car. 7.5.
Darrell Waltrip spends an unusual amount of time watching his car being worked on.
Every car I have is like a friend. I know them. I know all their bad habits, and I know all their good features, and I try to correct the bad habits and take advantage of the things that they can do for me. There's so many things that affect the car. Tire wear, temperature, how hot it is outside, the atmospheric conditions, the barometer has an effect on the engine. Today, we utilize the Goodyear engineers to give us a temperature on the tires to help us set the car up.
What exactly can be learned from this process? Goodyear field manager Phil Holman.
What he's doing there is he's taking the tire temperatures with a device called a barometer that records the temperature degree across the tire. And from taking all four tire temperatures, or on all four tires, the driver can actually tell how his car is responding to the track. If he's got too much oversteer, if he's got too much understeer, if the camber is wrong in the front, or things like that. They can make the car work better from what he reads off of that.
Only NASCAR-approved steel wheels can be used on these cars, and the rules are strict about the tires too. They can be no wider than 9.5 inches, which is very narrow for a heavy 3,700-pound race car.
We've got the heaviest racing machine in the world, and probably the smallest tire for that size. We've been fortunate that we've been able to develop a tire that can take that and take a lot more abuse than that.
Racing on high-banked oval tracks puts a different strain on each side of the car.
The rules specify that a tire company has to recommend a left side and a right side tire if you want that. The left side normally is a softer tire than the right side by varying degrees.
On each track, the steepness of the banking varies. Therefore, the speed of the cars varies. So the rubber compound in the tires has to be designed for each track.
If you get to a higher bank track, you get much, much more strain, pressure, and aggravation on the tire.
High speed is the essence of this kind of racing. The cars lap this track, Michigan International Raceway, at over 170 miles an hour, for example, placing a terrific strain on the tires. It takes advanced technology to handle these problems, and Goodyear supply all the tires for Winston Cup racing. Improved rubber compounds and low-profile tires were developed from racing experience. And there's also a valuable spin-off for street motorists from the engineers' experience of racing.
They are working in a very important area, the tire technology. And when they go on to further their careers, they're a little bit wiser, I'd say, in working on passenger tires or radials or things of that nature. And I think that gives the company an advantage.
Since there are no runoff areas on these oval tracks, the cars don't race in the rain. If it does rain, the race organizers make great efforts to dry the track out. Jet dryers crawl round, hoping that another shower won't immediately ruin their efforts. Stock car drivers, in marked contrast to the drivers of other kinds of race cars, sit close to a big steering wheel.
The way I look at it, and this is the way I tell young drivers, where can you hold up the most weight? Can you hold up a lot of weight stuck out here? Can you hold 100 pounds up with your arms stuck out like that? Or can you hold 100 pounds up with arms in here like this? Obviously, you can do it in here like this. So we don't move our bodies closer to the dash itself. We move the steering wheel back toward the driver. So we got plenty of leg room, got legs extended pretty well, but got the wheel extended back, the steering shaft, so that, in fact, the steering wheel is right, not way out here like this, because that'll wear you out. I mean, it just physically wears you out. We get the wheel up close where we got a lot of leverage. We get a lot of body into it this way. And in a 500-mile race, again, thinking about how tiring it is, that's important.
On the banked turns, helped by their spoilers, the cars can generate enough downforce to increase their weight almost 3 times. All the components, including the tires, have to be stressed for a weight not of 3,700 pounds, but of 9,000 pounds. And this means that the drivers are forced over toward the right-hand side of the car for several hours, placing a great strain on the neck.
Sometimes I have a strap on my helmet. It keeps the helmet from trying to go to the right. As you go around these turns, you get a tremendous amount of side bite in the car and a tremendous amount of G-forces. And the helmet weighs about 7 pounds, so in the course of a 500-mile race or 3.5-hour race, the helmet becomes very, very heavy, your neck becomes very weary, and you need that strap to help hold all that in place.
The cars qualify for a start position by running alone for 2 laps, with the fastest man on pole position. In 500 miles, that's not so important in terms of winning, but it is important in other ways.
At the end of the year, there's a huge bonus for the guy that's set on the most poles. There's a race in Daytona called the Busch Clash that gets you in a little 50-mile race that pays $75,000 to win. So there are a lot of monetary advantages to sitting on the pole, and there's a lot of psychological advantages to sitting on the pole. All of a sudden, if you go out and you sit on the pole and you beat everybody by a couple of tenths, and say, whoa, what are those guys doing? They've really come up with something. And automatically the other competitors saying, boy, he's going to be tough in this race. Old Waltrip's got his car dialed in this week.
If old Waltrip doesn't have his car dialed in, he soon makes his feelings clear.
What do we run? Right, 59 flat. I didn't hear you. You're still your second fastest right now.
As soon as qualifying is over, the water is drained from the boiling hot engine, and it's replaced by the engine that will actually power the car in the race.
Most of our qualifying motors, we try to set them up to be a little bit on the loose side with as much normally as compression, trying to put the utmost horsepower into the motor for like a short period of time.
The race engine is different. A constant struggle is going on to compromise between enough power to be faster than the opposition and enough reliability to outlast them.
If you don't finish one of these races, then the main objective of the team, which is the National Point Championship at the end of the year, cannot be achieved unless you do finish the race. So reliability is very, very important, but you can't sacrifice a lot of reliability and give up much speed. You know, at the same time, it's a give and take situation, it really is.
Race day is a little different from the preceding days. The 40 cars have not run since yesterday's practice, but they are lined up ready to go, as are all the emergency services, including, at this particular track, 8 fire trucks. Everything is ready for the big moment, the start.
I've been doing this for almost 20 years, and at race morning, I still have butterflies. I get up anticipating the race, and I'm a little anxious about it. When you go out on the grid and the car is there and you first get in, a lot of things go through your mind. Have we got the car set properly? And is the engine going to run properly?
Car 11, Darrell Waltrip, the Budweiser Kentucky Fried Chicken Chevy.
As long as there's tomorrow, there's no end.
Sometimes I wish I didn't know so much about the car. Then I wouldn't worry so much. But on the other hand, I've got to know about it, so if something goes wrong with it, I know what to do to it. My butterflies are all for the car, and then a little bit of worry about somebody doesn't run into me or have a wreck in front of me that I can't avoid.
The race starts with a pace car leading the cars around the track to warm up the engines and transmissions and to give the crowd a show. Then suddenly, it's every man for himself. It may look wild, but the drivers have to pace themselves.
You can't go out there and just run as wide open, flat out for 250 miles and blow the engine or wreck the car or wear yourself out. Some guys get in a race, get a little tired and start saying, whoa, I got to slow down a little bit. I'm getting tired. You need to think about these things going into a race. Have a game plan and utilize that game plan for these long races.
The drivers have to take care of the whole car, including the tires.
If he goes into the turn real hard and just shoves the car in there, he can affect the tire wear and, more importantly, affect the tire temperature. If he gets the tire too hot by abusing it, the tire will go away on him, and the next time around won't be as effective in the turn. A good driver knows how to feel his tires, and he won't be doing that.
If there is any kind of an incident, the yellow flag is immediately shown. The pace car comes out and the race cars must follow it, usually at around 60 miles an hour until the track is clear and safe again. When this happens, many drivers go charging into the pits. They want to have their pit stops while their competitors are doing 60 miles an hour and not 180. This is an opportunity for them to improve their car's suspension setup and for the drivers to have a brief rest. When the track is clear, the green flag is shown, and it's back to battle once more. It's impossible to imagine what it's like to drive these cars at high speeds for 400 or 500 miles, but this is how Darrell describes it.
Just someday, roll all the windows up in the car, and it's a hot summer day, 100 degrees, roll all the windows up in the car, turn the heater on wide open, and ride around for 3.5 hours with the radio turned wide open, just as loud as you can get it. That's what a driver has to go through.
But the strain on the drivers is not just physical.
Today, it's a thinking man's game. Sure, it's great to have ability. You need ability. You can't be successful without it. But you've got to know how to use it. You got to know when to go, and you got to know when to whoa. And you don't do that with your foot. You do that with your head.
Even the driver's wife has to find a way to deal with the tension of the race, Mrs. Waltrip.
A number of years ago, I began keeping lap times and pit stops and fuel mileage, and that gives me something to do, keeps my mind occupied, and it gives me a really good reason to be here, and it keeps my mind off of the things that could possibly happen on the racetrack.
If something should happen to the car, as in this case where Darrell was unavoidably smashed into the wall, then the crew really goes into action.
I've been in some pretty serious accidents. I haven't been any broken bones. I haven't been burned. I haven't had anything major happen to me. I've been in some horrible looking crashes, but our cars are the safest race cars in the world. If I'm going to be in an accident of any kind, I want to be in a Winston Cup stock car.
The crew will try everything to keep a car going. In this case, even fitting a new radiator, which your garage wouldn't do in a couple of minutes like this. The driver has to be patient, perhaps just sitting there calmly having a drink while vital moments tick away. In this case, Darrell's patience was to no avail, since the engine was damaged beyond repair. A driver has to develop a philosophy for all situations.
You run a race and you don't win, and the crew hugs your neck, and everybody comes up and says, man, you did a great job. You did the best you could do. That's all that car would do today. And you're sitting there thinking, man, that's not so. If I'd only done this, or if I'd only done that, or why didn't I do this? And you really sometimes are hard on yourself. You're too critical of your own driving, and it just always amazes me. Seems like the worst I think I did, the better other people think I did. And then on days when I think I did a great job, they all compliment the car. Boy, that car was really fast today.
The closeness of the cars, sometimes inches from each other, at speeds of up to 220 miles an hour, is what excites the fans. And passing in stock car racing requires a technique all of its own.
You've got to utilize the draft. You've got to get back and get a little bit of a running start on the car ahead of you, and then utilize that vacuum that's right in behind the car. Utilize that vacuum to get your speed up so that when you pull out, you literally, what we call slingshot by the guy. The other way is just purely and simply out-drive him or out-muscle him. These cars are big, they got a lot of fenders and doors and sheet metal down the side, and you can do what we refer to as body slam the guy. There's a lot of good ways and a lot of bad ways to pass somebody. Some drivers, if you just sit on their back bumper long enough, they'll make that critical mistake, open the door for you, and you go by easy. Other drivers are real hard to pass, and you might tap them a little in the rear to kind of get their attention, bump them a little going down the straightaway just to say, hey, I'm back here, buddy, I want to by, you know. You use your bumper as a horn. We don't have horns, so you kind of use your bumper to let a guy know that you want by. But all those guys, some of them respond and some of them don't. Sometimes you have to get physical to pass a guy. That's late in a race. You certainly don't do those kinds of things early in a race, but when it comes down to the last 2 or 3 laps, everybody's fangs comes out.
500 miles of this takes it out of the drivers.
Your head is killing you. You got a busting headache. Your ears are ringing. Every muscle in your body feels like somebody just beat the fire out of you. You feel like you went to a gang fight and your gang didn't show up.
But nothing, it seems, can erode Darrell's fascination for stock car racing.
As a kid growing up, I couldn't wait to get a car. I just wanted to be behind the wheel of my car. I wanted to drive. And I think that's part of what makes our sport so great is it's an all-American sport. It's a love affair that Americans have had with an automobile since the early 1900s. I wanted to feel that thing going down the road, shift those gears and stand on that gas and squeal those tires. I just couldn't wait to do that.